All right, guys. So we're back to another office hour lesson. We're actually recording 2 or 3 episodes back to back. So same exact appearance. We don't wear this every single week, but we're going to change it up a bit. So most of these videos, I've asked Matt a lot of different questions, but now it's going to be Uno reverse. I'm going to be asked questions by Matt, and this will be kind of interesting too. Also, to fully note, I am a bit tired today, so it'll be kind of fun to see me mess up a few times, but we'll go through it on that side of things. What we're going to be talking about today is me transitioning from electrical engineering into data science. So, full transparency, I have an electrical engineering degree from the University of Central Florida. In fact, when I went into college, I did not know about data analytics or data science. We'll cover that throughout this lesson. And I think it'll be kind of fun showing how I found this journey and where I'm at today. Additionally, we have a few links down below in the in the description that you guys should check out. Number one, our Discord server. A lot of these type of videos, we ask members in our Discord server for questions, and they are brought into these videos. Additionally, we have a really good community in there. I think we're almost at 400 to 500 members. We also have mentorships available down below where it's one-on-ones with both me and Matt for a limited amount of time. We have a few different students in there right now that we teach every single week, whether it's technical skills or trying to improve their career, jumping into a data analytics role or moving from data analyst to data scientist. So we have a few empty slots still, but those tend to get filled up pretty fast. So make sure to check that out down below. But back into this episode. Matt's going to have fun with this one because I asked him a ton of tough questions. Now he's going to.
I know. Now it's my turn. So my question is from I'm someone who didn't switch careers. I did computer science in college, did computer science out of school. I went from there. I'm sure in college you took coding classes, but that wasn't the focus. I mean, I know it wasn't because my brother's electrical engineer major. What did you find was the best way to start to think about, this is my skill set that I have, and you could break, it's probably like 70% electrical engineer stuff, maybe 30% software, or whatever you think that breakdown was out of school, to taking that smaller percent and making that the focus of your career. I went from probably, 90% software focused and 10% whatever right into it. It was easy for me to do that. But what was that sort of like to go from that smaller percent to that being the main focus of what you actually do?
Sure. So to answer that, actually, the story goes back a few years. So in high school, my first and only job, I was doing website design. So it's kind of nice learning a little bit on that side of things. And through website design, I learned something called SEO, search engine optimization. And what I really liked on the SEO side of things was the data. One of my favorite things to do ever was keyword research, trying to also look at backlink portfolios and try to make decisions for sites based off of where they're at for keywords. Like, hey, you need to write articles based off of these. We think people would go from this page to this page based off of it, or based off the backlink portfolio and the strength of your website. We think you could possibly rank for this article and it could lead to possible conversions. I'm not even talking about like conversion rate optimization or things like that, but I really dived into SEO. I worked for an SEO YouTuber for a while and I love the data aspect of it. Also, I'm a huge sports fan. And one of the things I wanted as a grow up, kind of like as a dream job, would to be working in a front office and just running data on players and like who to trade for and things like that. So I loved math. I also competed in math competitions in high school. So I like math, I like computers, I like data. But again, I had no idea that there was jobs around data analytics or data science, right? So going into college, I didn't know what degree to choose. There's so many different degrees going in there. You're 18 years old, right? My parents aren't engineers. In fact, my dad sells insurance and my mom works at a bank. So for the longest time, I thought I was going to go either into banking or something like that. And always through high school, everyone said, oh, engineers, if you're good at math, you'll make a lot of money as an engineer. Go through the STEM route. Everyone keeps telling you that. So literally going into college, I looked up toughest engineering degrees with math. Electrical engineer was like number 1 or 2 on all these different lists. And I was like, that's the degree for me. So I went into electrical engineering with that. I had a lot of dual enrollment or AP classes. And for those that are foreign, outside the United States, Essentially what AP and dual enrollment is in high school, you're allowed to take college classes, or I guess for you guys, it would be university a little bit early. So I had a bunch of different credits in calculus, statistics, and different things like that I need for math competitions anyways. But going into college, it's like, all right, electrical engineering is my route. And I went through that for essentially the first 2.5 or 3 years. And for the longest amount of time, I thought I was going to jump into electrical engineering or do something with SEO. Wasn't fully convinced at that point. But then it was either junior year or senior year, I found out about a class with sports analytics with ticket sales. And I thought this was amazing. I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because, this was kind of something I really wanted to jump into. I had no idea how we would jump into it anyways. So I'm like, I'm going to take this class as an elective. And what I found out in that class is about SQL. I learned about Tableau and Power BI. And they had different members of teams throughout Florida come into our class and talk about how they use data analysis to make decisions on ticketing pricing. So like even going to this class, I think this is kind of funny. I originally thought ticket prices, sometimes they'll inflate it or deflate it. I thought a lot of the giveaways would be kind of one of the highest things going in there. Like if someone was giving away a bobblehead of a famous player, let's say, for example, if the Dodgers were giving a Shohei Ohtani bobblehead, right? Maybe they'll increase the ticket price for a few days because a lot of fans will want to come in for that promotion. At the time, and it could be different right now. They mentioned, time of the season, are kids out of school? Are they in school? As well as the opponent, are their number one and number two methods on pricing tickets based off of the models. But it was really cool to see members of the Magic and the Rays and the Buccaneers, different teams throughout Florida come in here, talk about what their role was and things like that. Like, oh, this is awesome. So I know in the class, I learned about some of these different tools. I learned about SQL, and that bug just hit me. I'm like, this is a really, really cool career path. I could find data from here. I could make decisions based around it. This kind of went back to what I was doing with SEO, but applying it to more of a business sense, because not every company is going to really invest in SEO. And it was still pretty niche back at the time. So, fast forward about a year or so, and we have COVID. So this is 2020. And at that time, I was applying to 2 sets of different jobs. So I was applying to data analytics jobs. I was applying to electrical engineering jobs. And the first job that came back to me was a data analytics job. And I ended up going through multiple rounds of interviews and got that. Did get some also interview options for electrical engineering, went through some of those, never got those jobs, but the data analyst one came in first, and I decided to take that. If an electrical engineering job came in first, maybe I would have went fully with electrical engineering. Obviously, it's 2020, so you never know what would happen. Jobs were really, really weird at that point, but ended up going the DA route. And fast forward a little bit of time, and I wanted to switch from DA to DS. And that's where I started this YouTube channel. I told myself, if I want to transition, I have to build something about transitioning. And that's where I started learning about the different skill sets and started making videos around it. But we'll cover that, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Was there any particular reason that you chose electrical engineering over computer engineering? They're generally kind of the same courses, but of course, computer one, there's probably more software classes. Was there a particular reason EE stood out more to you than that? Or is it just,
I think at first I was going for computer engineering, and then just based off of the electives that I chose, it kind of just made sense on the credit side of things to go EE. Typically within this route with electrical engineering, some schools combine them together, electrical engineering, computer engineering. Others have it separate. So how I figured, and again, I could be completely wrong because I don't hire in this sector. A lot of people would view computer engineer or electrical engineer as kind of equals on that side of things, with computer engineering being a little bit better programmers, electrical engineer focus a little bit more on hardware. But again, a lot of schools combine them together, call it EECE. At least that's what it was when I was applying back in 2016.
And when you had just like a year and change of the data work coming out of school. Was there prep outside of your courses to try to make up for some of the lack of knowledge that you did to apply and go through those interviews? Because you probably couldn't just rely on what
No, you definitely
You
can't
learned at
rely on one
school.
course in college to get you there.
Yeah.
And,
What did you,
the
you
thing
know,
is, I went through a bunch of different SQL tutorials on YouTube, some really late nights watching those. Additionally, I did take some practice SQL questions online. There's a few different websites out there that do that, and I took a few other SQL courses just to learn more of the concept. At the time, I kind of knew that there was different, flavors of SQL, so I didn't really know what to expect going into an interview. I'm like, man, what if I study my SQL and it's a MS SQL or a Postgres interview? What's going to happen on that side of things? So that kind of concerned me a little bit early on. We can talk about the interviews in general because I still remember them to this day. And man, I was so nervous, man, for those interviews back then. But yeah, I mean,
were those roles like pretty, because I think it's personally like very like company different in terms of how competitive it is and how much leeway they give you on what your degree and focus actually is. Did you feel that those roles were ultra competitive and so you wanted to spend more time, or you just wanted to cover your grounds and just make sure you were good on it?
I just wanted to cover my grounds and make sure because one things I know from electrical engineering is they would have some sort of technical interview associated with it. And doing some research, you don't want to go blind into an interview, right? So I did a
Yeah.
little bit of research on what was an interview for a data analyst, and it mentioned, make sure you know these SQL concepts. So went online, did a ton of practice problems until like, okay, I got this down. And personally, I think the SQL interview questions are easier than some of the leak code stuff for software engineers. I see what people have to answer on the DSA type questions. I'm like, man. And again, I'm not a software engineer. I know SQL pretty well, though. I'm like, these SQL things are a piece of cake. You can answer these
Yeah.
questions in like a minute. And compared to the DSA ones, you have to really think about it. I know there's a lot of patterns and you'll pick it up over time, but I found that I was quickly able to learn a lot of the different patterns within the SQL interview questions pretty fast.
And what did you think coming from that, like I said, a year and change of actually doing it? What did you find was the hardest topics to make sure that you were prepared for to interview for those roles? Like, it was a sequel focused
So it's
interview and prep.
the funny thing is it's kind of dates. Always with SQL queries, I was messing up with dates on that side of things, like filtering specifically.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I sometimes have to look up specific dates formats. I don't know why it just doesn't always click for me. A lot of other filtering quite easy, like aggregate functions, quite easy for me. Ranks. I know one of the things I was always to try to memorize the different types of ranks because that's a question. For some reason, it's so common in interviews, and it's like in the real world, you're like, how often are we going to use all these different types of ranks? But all the interview sites love using those. So I had to
Yeah.
try to memorize that type of stuff. I mean, there's so many nuances with that side of things there. Like you have to study it for the interviews and you never use it in the real life, which it's a problem in itself. But I understand
Yeah.
why companies do that because they want to make sure, did you study for it? And it's the same as like universities, right? If you're a teacher, you're going to still cover some very specific topics that might not be in the real world, but just make sure that your students has studied that.
Yeah, and I mean, at least on the software side, and that's of course very leak code focused. A lot of those are more, they're not things that you use or expected to kind of be able to use off the top of your head, but they want to see more of the problem solving aspect behind those questions more than do you know it. They want to see like, can you problem solve at that level? Because that's going to usually give you a little bit better, or that's going to give them a better idea of what you are capable of growing in when you're actually in that role. And so that's, at least what I see with a lot of the focus of like, why am I focused on linked lists with, binary nodes or whatever. It's more of the problem solving side than it is, do you actually know this stuff and are you actually going to use it off the top of your head like in a job?
Yeah, and I will say the Nerve-Wracking thing for my first data analytics interview, which I will say my first one, I was able to get the job through that, luckily, is going into the office and doing an in-person interview on the coding side of things. What was funny about it is went into a conference room, right? Set up a foreign computer, the TV's here to the side. So you have like the mouse here, you have the keyboard you had to look up over there and all think at the same time. And then It was a virtual interview because the person was out of California. I'm here in Florida. So it felt really weird. Also, at the same time, the mouse and the keyboard didn't register right away. There was a bit of a lag. So when
Yeah.
trying to write out these queries and like explain how I join these different tables, it was like I'd type something out and it would take like a second or two to go on the screen. It just added to the nerves on
Yeah.
the side things. I'm like, man, every time I practice, it's like 1-to-1. I'm good to go. Here, it's like, oh man, did I make a mistake? And then you just sit there and pause and like, nope, that looks good and everything like that. For those watching, by the way, that want their first data analytics interview and things like that, please at least know your joins, because the funny thing I've heard at multiple jobs is people interviewing for these don't even know, the difference between a left or inner join or outer join. And it's like, or a cross join. It's like, how do you go into an interview and not study at least the very bare bones, like the joins and stuff like that? It amazes me. And I think that also, and maybe we'll cover it in another video, is this job market for data analysts or data scientists oversaturated? Because we see on LinkedIn or social media, like 500 people applied for these jobs. Is part of it because these jobs have gone viral on TikTok and other social media sites, and people say, oh, you can become a data analyst in 2 weeks if you study. And people just say, oh, I learned a select star, I'm going to apply to this job and really think I'm going to get this now. Or is it, there's 500 people out there that have studied interview questions, that understand the concepts, that also have studied the company? Because it's funny, again, the other side of things is people blindly apply to stuff, get interviews, and not know one thing about a company. Like, how do you get an interview and not study the company's history, know who's in charge right now, know your interviewer? Again, all topics we can cover another day, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people nowadays, just even if they have a job, they apply to a lot of jobs to either try to get better ones, and I think a lot of those applicants are people that they have a role. The role's fine, but they're just applying to new stuff to see if they can get something better. I don't think there was as much of that, maybe like 10 years ago or so. Now it's once you are at a company that's good and is known and the industry is good, you can start just applying to everything, and you're probably going to get through to some extent and see if you can land something that pays much more, or is better for what you want or whatever. I think a lot of people are just applying to a lot of jobs, regardless of if they have one or not.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just mentioning like more of the entry level stuff, like the entry level data analyst. I think you get a lot of the people that study for a week or 2 weeks and then apply, where I think you should really focus on, improving your skill sets. What we've harped on so many times, having a really good, solid resume and then apply. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot, like pretty much everybody is trying to move into one of those roles, regardless of what you did, in school. Like, we get applicants even that are like philosophy major, but I took a bunch of data courses, like I just think a lot of people the salary for some of these has gotten so absurd that for them it's if they feel they made a mistake with their major, like they might as well just apply and just see like what they
Look,
can
I
do.
was one of those that made a mistake. I don't think I would
and
enjoy
they might just see like maybe it's a company that and they'll try to spin their degree into why it's a fit for what you're doing, and they're trying to see if that's something you believe or not. But I think that the salaries are so absurd that people feel like I got to be able to do it. And with a lot of these roles, a lot of them are work from home. A lot of them are a lot of vacation. Like they have
have a lot of perks
setup.
to it.
So when you're doing DA, spending your days doing SQL and having fun with that, however you had fun with that, because I certainly wouldn't. What made you kind of decide that you think data science is more of the route than what you were currently doing? Whether you thought that just transitioning all the way to data science was the way to go, or some sort of split between the two. Maybe it's a role that kind of encompasses both. Like, what was your thought process around why you wanted to kind of make that transition over?
Yeah, so the job I have right now I'd say is a pretty good mixture in between. So I do probably use Python 20 to 30% of my time, whether it's building out Streamlit tools or doing some type of data analysis, which I find easier to do in Python, especially when you get into the nitty gritty. Whereas SQL side of things, it's easier to pull from the database. So I'm not fully like DS or ML as of yet, although what I have been trying to pitch at my company is to use, OpenAI with LangChain. Made some videos here on the channel to build out the skill set on that, as well as machine learning models, which hopefully we're going to start putting into production a little bit later this year or early next year. So I'm super excited for that. And we'll definitely talk about that in some other videos. But for me, it was kind of just, I was doing the same thing every single day, pull from the database, talk to stakeholders, which, by the way, not complaining about this first job. I did actually enjoy it quite a bit. And I was talking to, second in charge at this company, third in charge. So I wasn't talking directly to the CEO, but I was talking to board members every single day. And it was across departments. It wasn't just specifically one department. I talked to 4 people, I believe, on the executive board, between accounting, between, our chief technology officer, as well as chief lawyer. Like, everyone had different data requests. And I was the guy that had to pull the data from the database. Then I had to make decisions based off of whatever project that they were doing or check numbers that were presented to them. And it was really fun. But at the end of the day, I just found myself for about a year and a half doing the same thing. Like, I was not improving in any capacity. And at the time, I'm like, how do I improve my skill set, right? It's great that I know SQL. It's great that I can talk to stakeholders. It's great that, I can run analysis, present it to a stakeholder, then they have their own meeting and approve it and see, what happens after my recommendation has been put live. Like, it's great to see all that, but internally, I'm like, I'm not improving. Like, is this what I'm going to do for the next 40 years? Just run SQL, do this. So in my eyes, I had to level up to somewhere. And I didn't know whether I wanted to go into data engineering or data science. And still, like, I'm still early into my career. I don't know if I'll full-time be data science my entire life or jump into DE or, move into an AI engineering role eventually. But I just started applying for stuff and started watching YouTube tutorials. What does it take to become a data scientist? And the first thing that really stood out, whether it was data science or data engineering, was Python. Now, I believe I used Python maybe in one class in college, and I knew a little bit of it, but I wasn't, a software engineer level. Like, I can't look at a leak code question like, oh, I know how to solve that, right? And today I would take a little bit of studying and I could probably be able to solve out leak code questions. But at that time, right, I was just not there. So I started learning, like, what's the equivalent of SQL in Python? Because I figured there'd have to be something there. And Python pandas hit me. I'm like, oh, Python pandas, awesome. So I started going through some Python pandas courses, learning on that side of things, and started to start solving, SQL interview questions with Python pandas, because again, they're almost equal. I think there's a little bit more that you can do within Python pandas when you're trying to do data analysis and compared to SQL. Again, SQL is great for pulling data. I think Python is better for analyzing data, especially when you start to want to build graphs and things like that. But I started really loving Python pandas, and I started applying to some jobs. I started networking as well, just telling people, like, listen, I'm a data analyst right now. My goal is to become a data scientist. I know I don't have the skill set. And I said that, like, going into these interviews, I know I don't have the data scientist skill set. This is what I accomplished as a data analyst. I am learning Python right now. Like, I want to keep on improving. And at the same time, as I did that, I started a YouTube channel, which this was originally was Ryan Nolan Data. So what I would do is I would study concepts. I'd make videos based around those concepts and keep going to show, like, hey, this is my YouTube channel. This is what I've learned, right? And I can apply this to a job, which I will say a lot of the stuff that I made videos on, I've been able to apply it to my job right now, and has made a huge difference. Like, I don't even know if I'd still have my job today because of reorgs and different things like that without knowing these skill sets that I've been able to make videos on, which I'm very thankful for making these videos and people watching and stuff like that, because I've learned quite a bit on that side of things. But, that's kind of how I presented myself. And I got really lucky through networking, and there's a data scientist role at the company I'm at right now. And again, presented the same thing, right? I'm a data analyst right now. These are the courses that I'm going through, right? I'm a beginner at Python, but I do know a lot about SQL. This company was trying to start building out a data scientist program, right? I was full of data analysts. There wasn't really any data scientists there. There's no models. And they want to eventually build into that. And that's where I still work today. We're still building out that program. Obviously, there's been some reorgs, so there's been some delays on that side of things. But it's been great because now I can actually build out Python projects, start automating stuff that are manual tasks, things that I look back at my first job. I'm like, man, if I knew Python, you know how much time I could have saved from doing some manual calculations in Excel or like presenting findings. I'm like, man, I really, really wish I had studied Python earlier. And, you know, being a data scientist right now, I have excuses to learn things like AI. I have excuses to learn machine learning. And you can apply them and see, you know, real results from that. Whereas as my role at my first company as a data analyst, I don't think I've ever had that chance. In fact, I asked my boss at the time, hey, you know, when can I start using Python? He said, in 5 years. Like, I asked him multiple times, like, hey, I want to start learning. 5 years. If you're here for 5 years, we can start getting you to start working with Python. And also, we never did anything with really outside of like presenting to members of the board, different things like that. We didn't really do any charts or graphics and like that. So we only use tabular data here.
Yeah.
So
Well,
at
I
that
believe
point, it was
that.
like I had to go somewhere else to improve my skill set. Like I was day after day, it was the same exact thing.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that. I think that data analyst roles at most companies are fairly capped in terms of the growth of skill set or the growth of salary, you know, just due to how many roles can there actually be that do something different when you're in that sort of data analyst bubble. If you work at a large company, Capital One, that's different, right? You have level 4, level 5 data analysts, like very different than a company that's on the smaller side that probably has a much more limited need for upper end data analyst full-time positions that are paid at that level compared to different companies.
Yeah, and it came to two things also. Like at the time, I think we were like 100 to 150 people. I think it's grown a little bit since then. The job where I'm at right now, I believe, is 300 to 400 people. So it is like it doesn't seem a lot to some other people that work at companies with thousands of people. But going from a company that's 100 people to something that's 300, it's a huge difference because now there's so many different departments. There's multiple data people and different organizations that you have to work with as well. There's data governance. Like there's so much that I've learned in this new role where I just would have never learned it in my first job. And again, it's just like at a certain point, you just feel like you're not improving your skill set and you have to take that leap. And I think that's just for everyone. At a certain point, you realize like, I'm not growing anymore. What do I have to do to continue to grow? For me, I
Yeah.
find this YouTube channel to be pretty liberating on that side of things. Right now, obviously, we're doing a lot of pandas videos because I do think it helps with a lot of beginners. But I can, and so can you. Explore different concepts, turn that into a video or an article, and then say, "Man, that was pretty cool." I know at one point I was doing PyTorch stuff on here. Originally thought we were going to jump into some PyTorch models that got canned, but you just never know. And when there's a concept that I think could be applied at the job, I'll start learning it, make videos on it, and if you use it, awesome. If not, at the end of the day, I can go back and rewatch the videos and learn from them.
Well, I think that went really well. I appreciate your answers on that. If anybody else has questions that they want to ask either me or Ryan, people ask this question in Discord to make these videos all the time. That's where a lot of the ones that you asked me come from. That's kind of where this one came from as well. Some people talking about, we've worked with some people that are making different transitions from roles and things like that. So if you're interested in connecting with us, talking with us about these type of topics, and even want to see, your questions turn into one of these videos, hop in the Discord. We've got it down below, and we hope to see you there and chatting.
Yep. And if you want any one-on-one mentorships with both me and Matt, we have the link down below as well in the description. So this would be private. You get homework assignments if you were trying to learn a technical concept, videos uploaded on YouTube channel that are unlisted, and so many more benefits. We have a few different people within our mentorship programs right now, and we're always open to exploring that if we are a good fit. Anyways, catch you guys in another video, and make sure to keep watching this office hours playlist.